Hi guys, today we're going over the rise of big business, going into the Gilded Age. So this is a time period when big business begins to rule America politically, socially, and economically, and there's going to be a big divide between the rich business owners and the poor workers. So the reason for all this is all the new technology that we're going to talk about later on in the week. But new technology makes it easier for businesses to produce goods. And in response to those changes, a new type of business is developed called a corporation. A corporation is a large business that's owned by several members, but really just acts as one. And this is where we get the term CEO. This is where we get the term board of trustees. So it's owned by people who buy stock into the company. And you can invest in stocks. Anyone can invest in stocks. And it's the idea that you buy a portion of the company does well, and you get paid dividends. Or you can sell the stock and it might be worth more, so you get money from the company going up in value. If you own stock, that doesn't mean that you get to make decisions. Like, I can go buy stock in Apple right now. I don't get to make decisions about the iPhone. I buy my stock, and I essentially have, in doing that, in this agreement, I'm putting the board of trustees or board of directors in charge of the portion that I have bought. And so the board of directors makes decisions, the CEOs make decisions, and corporate officers run day-to-day operations in the factories and in the businesses where the product is made. So to gain dominance, different companies would do something called creating a trust. A trust means all shareholders would merge, and all these companies would be run by a board of trustees. So if there were multiple board of directors, they would all combine, and it would be run by a board of trustees. And oftentimes these businesses bought out other businesses as well. So when a trust gained complete control over an industry, it's called a monopoly. So let's say there are 3 gas companies, and gas company A, B, and C. And company A buys out company B. So they buy out all their stock. That's how companies buy each other. They buy each other's stock. And all the board of directors on company B now have to listen to company A because company A bought them. They might all be fired, and company A is just going to take over everything. That's called a trust. The shareholders of similar companies are merging. Then if company A plus B, which is its own company now, buys out company C, now there's only one gas company. That's called a monopoly, when there's no competition in the market at all. So no competition means that gas company can set the price for whatever it wants. And if you want gas, you have to pay it. They don't have to be particular in creating good gas or having nice gas stations, because if you want gas, you have to put up with them. So lower quality and higher prices is often what results of a monopoly. And when you think of the word monopoly, you might think of the board game. And the goal of the board game is to own all of the squares on the board so that when people land on it, they have to pay you. That's exactly what a monopoly is. So there are 2 types of businesses. There's vertical integration and horizontal integration. And we're going to focus mostly on horizontal, but I wanted to give you a peek of vertical as well. So vertical integration is the idea that acquiring companies that support your business. So if I make a chair, I need to own the company that makes the plastic, that makes the metal, that makes the fabric, that makes the padding. I need to own the company that ships it in a truck. And so if I own all of those things, then I own the factors of production, and I can control the price and quality of my product a lot better. So vertical integration is not bad for the economy. Not bad for the economy or consumers. Write that somewhere on your notes, please, because it means we're going to get better products. Horizontal integration is the opposite. It's when a business takes over other businesses and forms a monopoly. And, I spelled that wrong. I'm sorry. And horizontal integration is bad for the economy. and mostly bad for consumers. Because if they buy out all the other companies, like an oil business buys out all the other oil refineries, all the other oil rigs, they consolidate those companies, they monopolize the market, then they can set whatever price they want, kind of like what we just talked about. So here is an example of that. It's kind of a silly example. So we've got horizontal here and vertical integration here. So vertical integration is this green box right here. Vertical integration would be if I want to own a gas station, I would buy the gas station and be ready for it to receive gas, but I would also buy the oil refinery, the pipeline that takes it to the factory where it's refined, the train that it's put on barrels and transported to the gas station. I own every part of the making of this good. Whereas horizontal integration would be, I want to own everything in the market. I'm going to buy up all of the oil refineries. And if people want gas, then I set the price because I have all of the factors of production. So this is bad for consumers. Horizontal. Vertical is good for consumers. So think about McDonald's. What goes into making a Big Mac? You need lettuce, you need buns, you need Big Mac sauce, you need meat, you need tomato, you need onion. So what if the McDonald's Corporation owned all those individual businesses? That would be vertical integration. And they would need to own the farm that the wheat is grown, that it's turned into buns. They need to own a farm with tomatoes and onions and cows. They need to own a slaughterhouse where the cows are slaughtered and then the meat is pattied. They need to own the trucks that transport it to the McDonald's, and they need to own the McDonald's. If there was no competition like Burger King or Wendy's, that would be horizontal integration. Horizontal integration. So if McDonald's decides they're going to buy out Burger King and Wendy's, goodbye Burger King, goodbye Wendy's. If I want a cheap burger, now I have to go to McDonald's. So what would happen to the price of Big Macs? They're going to raise the price of Big Macs because they know if I want a cheap burger, I have to go to McDonald's. Okay, if I don't want to go to a sit-down restaurant, I just want a burger and fries, go through the drive-thru, my only option is McDonald's. Okay? So the government is supposed to protect consumers and supposed to protect its constituents. Why would they allow something like this to happen? And this happened in the Gilded Age. And when I say the Gilded Age, it's the time period that we're studying. It's the 1870s through the 1890s. So why did the government allow this? They'd never seen this happen before. They didn't know to stop it. And also in the beginning, it was good economic growth. These companies were making tons of money and employing tons of people, which looks awesome on the surface, but it ends up being bad for consumers. This is called laissez-faire capitalism. Laissez-faire sometimes means hands off. Okay, or allowed to do, leave it alone kind of idea. And it's the idea that the government is just going to be hands off. It's just going to let it do what it needs to do, allow it to do, leave it alone. And so they're not going to make rules and regulations like minimum wage, like pollution control, like they're not going to disallow monopolies. And that's good in a sense that it allows entrepreneurs to start new businesses with no regulations, but it's bad because those big businesses can buy out all the little businesses and then own everything and create a monopoly that will then raise the price. So why would this type of business be problematic? It's going to raise the price for consumers, raise price for consumers. It's not going to allow competition. Who will it benefit? The rich business owners, the CEOs. And who will it not benefit? The workers who have to work for these people and work for little wages. Imagine the CEO making $1 billion and poor person down here is making $7.25 an hour. And consumers. Consumers will not benefit because prices will go up if companies start combining. All of this was kind of spurred on from a social idea. All of that stuff was economic, but it's spurred on through a social movement that was written about in books of the time called social Darwinism. And we've seen the word Darwin before. Charles Darwin, the theory of evolution. So it is an evolution theory, but it's a social evolution theory. And here's what it is. The new industry created large inequalities between rich and poor. And social Darwinists said, that's the way it's supposed to be. They believed that stronger people, businesses, and nations would prosper and weaker ones would fail. That evolution can be applied to social class. Basically saying that the big businesses and the rich people, they're rich because they had better aptitude to be rich. They had better resources. They themselves were more likely to survive, and so they became rich. And everyone who's poor, well, they just didn't have what it takes. They didn't make the cut, and so that's why. And that those type of people will eventually die out or just get what's coming to them, and the rich will create a better society. This was justified in a book that was very popular at the time called The Gospel of Wealth. And gospel, the word gospel means truth. So he's saying the truth of wealth. And it was written by a man named Andrew Carnegie, who said that the wealthy are wealthy because they're intended to be. They have evolved past being poor, and that those people should be trustees for the poorer brethren, and they should help them. Help the poor, but not through welfare. So how can you help the poor but not through welfare? Welfare would be the government gives money to those who are poor, or people donate. Helping the poor but not through welfare would be like paying better wages or creating better public spaces, public schools, or public parks, libraries, but not handouts, not giving out money, okay? So social Darwinists believe that they were rich because they were supposed to be rich and the poor are supposed to be poor. We have a few great industrialists. I'm going to write business owners next to this because these people end up being the big CEOs of those giant monopolized companies. So John D. Rockefeller started Standard Oil Company, and by 1875 he had owned half of all the oil in the United States, and he was known for building an oil pipeline and trying to patent that oil pipeline so no one else could transport oil as easily as him, so he could make more money. He bought out a lot of younger, smaller oil companies in order to be so successful. So he sets the price of oil. Andrew Carnegie owned Carnegie Steel Company, and Carnegie Steel did the same thing. They bought out a bunch of other steel companies. He's the one that wrote that Gospel of Wealth book. He ends up selling his company and kind of retiring for $400 billion. Cornelius Vanderbilt owned many different railroads. He owned all the railroads that stretched from New York to Chicago and bought out competition so that he would remain the owner of all those railroads. So if you wanted to get from New York to Chicago or ship anything from New York to Chicago, you are paying Vanderbilt. And then J.P. Morgan, he's a financier and banker. He ends up buying the Carnegie Steel Company and renaming it U.S. Steel, and he also started General Electric. And General Electric is GE, is a company that is still around today. So when we look at these men, we're going to talk about whether they were robber barons or captains of industry. And we're going to debate whether they were good guys or bad guys, essentially. So I'm going to teach you what those words mean. The legacy of the great industrialists is often debated. Robber barons and captains of industry. Are they one? Are they the other? Are they both? Were they good guys or bad guys? So robber barons is a word that means they are businessmen that are kind of conniving and clever and mean in their tactics to control the market. And the idea of calling them robber barons is they're robbing from the poor. They're exploiting the poor to benefit themselves. So they don't pay their workers well. They They break up strikes in a violent way. The working conditions in their factories are awful. They're mean to competitors. They sue competitors and ruin them legally to try and get to the top. So very ruthless. Whereas captains of industry, if we were to call these men captains of industry, we would be saying they're businessmen who use their skills to strengthen the economy and improve the country. They're providing jobs. They're making factories. They're selling goods. They are increasing wealth in America. And we could look at all of these men and say they're one or the other, or they're both, or sometimes they're this and sometimes they're this, and we're going to do that tomorrow. So in categorizing robber baron versus captains of industry, we're going to have to really look at these men and the multiple things that they do to decide whether or not they were good guys or bad guys with their wealth and money.